Aight, hot topic. Rings of power. Oh wait, no, I mean, rings of woke. Look at this trash. What were they thinking? Hashtag not my Tolkien. Galadriel manspreading, homeless hobbits. This isn't real Tolkien. Why would dwarves have dark skin? The George Soros agent Jeff Bezos is trying to groom you and your children with his neo-Marxist propaganda. Fuck that. That's all bullshit. The show has just come out, and I haven't even seen it at this point, but this response has just been insane. And no, I'm not saying that everyone who doesn't think the show looks amazing is doing it for problematic reasons, but so many of the big names going after this kind of stuff are clearly coming at it from a very, let's say, bad actor standpoint. And there's a real slippery slope towards some super nasty stuff going on there. I mean, honestly, I'm never going to defend Amazon because they are a horrible, horrible corporation, but I think the show looks kind of cool. It looks well done, the actors look good, and come on, we were never going to get accurate and true adaptations of these stories. Look at the books these are from. This isn't like a Lord of the Rings or a Hobbit. There's no typical classical narrative to these, but I like it. Obviously, they're mixing stuff up. They're changing characters around and truncating timelines, but we have the Lord of the Rings trilogy. That's never going away. Whatever happens now isn't going to ruin that for you. And besides, if you really are all about the lore and the technical stuff, those movies aren't perfect either. Honestly, go into like non-MESVG spaces online and holy crap, the opinion on those movies completely changes. Just bring up plate mail and people will lose their minds. On that note, one of the biggest sticking points that people seem to have for the show has been the aesthetics. Well, yeah, there's some stuff I don't love. Overall, it looks really cool, and particularly, I really like the look of the Numenoreans. I really like the kind of gold and tan color schemes with those really bright pops of blue, and considering I've been humming and hawing over doing some kind of Numenorean force for ages now, not able to really decide on a pure aesthetic, let's just use this one. And so I decided that I was going to try and as closely match models to the show, just using a whole bunch of historical stuff. And so let's go with that. To start off then, I went to some of my favorite online miniature shops and just perused through all of their kits online, seeing what bits and pieces seemed to fit with the most important aesthetic details that I thought would be needed here. The big ones being the aforementioned scale mail, as well as the kind of tall and conical helmets with the separate cheek parts, and of course the round shields. So once I found a fair few kits that I thought would work well together, I did what I'm going to call a kit bash sketch, where I drew up a version of the models I would be making using the bits from the actual kits as references. And looking at that and being pretty happy with it, I bought the kits I needed and went from there. The main one I decided to use was the Byzantine Spearmen from Fireforge Games, as the style of mail that they have fit perfectly with what I was trying to go for here. I really only used the bodies though, as the arms had these kind of leather straps on them that I didn't think really worked, and the helmets just didn't fit at all. Also, I find that when assembled out of the box, these models look kind of awkward and kind of static, but mixing together all these different bits helped to bring them more alive, in my opinion. Then it was the helmet, and that one was honestly kind of tricky, as the shape is quite distinctive here, and most of the ones I saw were either too pointy or too flat. But eventually I found these Saxon Thanes from Gripping Beast. There's a whole bunch of different helmets in here, and a lot of them don't work, but there are these ones that have this intricate kind of pointed look to them. I think that's supposed to be some kind of animal on top, but I can't really tell. So it just kind of looks like nice intricate filigree or something, and that fits perfectly with the look in the show. So I took those and popped those on top, and the next bits we needed were the arms, and I grabbed those off of some Arab heavy cavalry that I actually had from Gripping Beast already in my backlog. These had really nice spear and shield arms that had this armor on the shoulders that matched up pretty well with the mail on the Byzantines. They also had nice round shields on the kit that I was also able to use. And honestly, we were done. The last thing we needed to do was obviously base them, and that runs into another bit of an issue here. Like a lot of companies other than Games Workshop, particularly around the historicals, they have these built-in bases to them. I think people call them pudding bases? I don't really know. And while I generally don't love these, as they can give this kind of thick, weird look to the bases, they did work really nicely here because they're exactly the right shape to cover up the slots in the classic GW 25mm slotted bases. So I didn't have to worry about finding a whole bunch of bases without slots. I could just use what I have and just smooth up the layer of the base with some green stuff afterwards before I put down the texture and grit. And there we have this nice little group of spearmen. As usual, I tend to use all of my miniatures in the Middle-earth strategy battle game, as it's my favorite game and basically one of the only ones I've bothered to learn. So I wanted to make sure my models match the profiles for the Numenoreans in that game. And while they can take swords and shields, I opted to give them all spears because I just generally find that more effective and easier in the game, as I don't like keeping track of who has what war gear. So if they all have the same war gear, that makes it easier. However, the other war gear they have options for are bows, so I wanted to make at least a few of those. So for the archers, I used basically the same approach. The only thing is I used the archer arms from the Arab kit instead of the spears, obviously. The other thing I did was I mixed in some unarmored arms, as it gave a nice little bit of variety to the figures, and also it makes sense for archers to maybe be a little bit less armored than their frontline counterparts. The other thing I decided to do here was add a plume to the back of their helmet, as they do have that in the show. Luckily, I had the Wargames Atlantic late Romans lying around, and they have a whole bunch of plumes in them, so I was able to just quickly cut a little bit off of those and the helmet and glue them right together. So after checking with my patrons to see which they preferred, I ended up going back to all my other models and adding those to those as well. From there, I just took the more intricate quivers from the Arab cavalry and added that to the back, and also finally realized that I hadn't given any of these guys swords. So I grabbed the Byzantine spearmen set again and took the sheathed swords off of them and attached them to all of their hips. So with the troops all done, we did need someone to lead them, and I wanted to push the captain a little bit farther here. Once again, I started with the Byzantine body, specifically choosing one with the Tarouges, as it made them look a little bit fancier. Then I took a cape from the Saxon Thanes and glued that on, before deciding that I wanted to have a bit of a different pose here. Instead of having him holding his shield, I wanted him to have his hand resting on it on the ground. So I took one of these straighter arms from the Arab cavalry archers, as well as an open hand from the Warlord Games orcs. And once I was happy with the position, I took one of the more intricate shields from the Arab cavalry and just placed it underneath the hand before gluing the whole thing together. Then I added a upturned arm with a sword before moving on to the helmet. In the show, the main bit of heraldry they have is the sun for our Paravizan. Paravizan? Our Paravizan. Our Parmesan. I'm real good at the lore. I really like the way it's integrated into a lot of the designs, and in particular, the wild helmet that Tar Miriel is wearing. So I wanted to integrate some of that wild spikiness into my captain's helmet. And I found the perfect kit from one of the Stormcast Vindictors from the old Dominion kit I've had lying around since last year. I just cut the helmet away from this and then selected one of the rounder helmets from the Saxon Thanes kit, before whittling both of them away and gluing them together. And so there we have this great little warband based on the Numenoreans from the Rings of Power. I'm honestly really happy and impressed with how close I feel like I was able to get this to the on-screen look, particularly as who knows when we're going to be getting official models, if ever, for these guys. The next step obviously is to paint them, so be sure you're subscribed and you've got all those notifications set up so you don't miss that. But for now, I've done one little test one and I really like the way he looks. So with that done, let's just all sit back and watch the show since it's finally actually come out. And I'll definitely put my thoughts on the first couple episodes down in the comments below. So you should too. What do you think of it? Are you really excited for it? Are you ambivalent towards it? Or do you just hate the idea of everything that Amazon is doing to the history of Tolkien? As a meantime, obviously a big thank you goes out to my patrons, as I can never express my appreciation for your support enough. So if any of you are interested in getting a little bit more behind the scenes stuff on the show, or just want to throw a little bit of support, hop on over and take a look at the Patreon page, as even a couple of bucks here and there honestly makes a huge difference, and I would just love to have you around our little community over there. So for now, just be sure to like, subscribe, do all that kind of stuff, and most importantly, stop getting so worked up about fantasy shows.
Lord of the Rings, man, I'm the token white guy.